Hello, everybody. This is Fernando for the latest Godzilla podcast. I promised the other day that I was going to make a video dedicated to the review of the latest Godzilla film now streaming on Netflix. I finally had a chance the other day to see it on my phone, and then I was going to be able to provide my own review of the film here. I'm sure some of you have already seen it already. If you haven't, then this review is going to contain some spoilers as well, so you may want to hold off at least until you've seen the film first and then come back to this video. But otherwise, yes indeed, I'm going to nitpick all the stuff associated with this film, give a lot of critiques to it, and then hopefully have some good news afterward in terms of its sequels, but we shall see. But let's go ahead and let's talk about the review here for the Godzilla Netflix film. By the way, it seems like it has like 3 titles. Netflix just flat out just calls it Godzilla. Then it's also known as Godzilla Planet of the Monsters, and then another version seems to be Godzilla Monster Planet. So don't exactly know for certain which one it really is, but for all intents and purposes I'll just call it Godzilla in this case. But yes, I went in with high hopes for this latest Godzilla film, the first one involving a true animated film, a CGI animated film, nothing like it before within the Godzilla world. And I practically went in clean in terms of any spoilers, in terms of anything as far as info into the story. I didn't know much of it when I was going into it. I wanted to keep it just crystal clean so that I would have the best perfect experience possible, the unbiased one at least. Unfortunately though, after watching this film, man, it just pretty much sums up one thing: this movie is a stinker. It bombs. It is bad. It is something that it's crazy how rotten this film is. I mean, it's not like the worst film of all time, but there are so many opportunities that this film had that it could have excelled at, and it could have made really, really good marks in, but it just failed to do so. And so because of it, as of right now, it really ranks down there in terms of the Godzilla movies overall within the franchise. And now that I've been able to see the film, and then I'm looking at the reviews of what other people have seen of it and then gave their opinions of it, it seems like that's the same thing. A lot of people are critiquing this film left and right. They see it as bad as I see it, and some of you out there are probably shaking your heads at this very moment right now. But yes, let's go ahead and let's talk about all the bad stuff in the film, and then I'll try to put in some good angles at least on some of the small things that truly worked. I won't talk about much about the story within the film. It's just there's not really much to talk about. It's one of its drawbacks is the bland storyline along with the bland characters. So go see the movie if you have a chance, if you truly want to see the story up front and close. But believe me, you're not really missing much other than the fact that there's a bunch of kaiju that rise up within Earth, and when that happens, then it just pretty much they take over the entire planet. And then of course Godzilla comes into play. He in turn slaughters all those kaiju. But what happens afterward is the rest of humanity, whatever is left, has to flee the planet. And when they do so, it goes into this weird world. I still don't quite understand. Apparently there's these UFOs that show up, classic UFOs it seems, and they have 2 different versions of them, 2 different races I guess of these aliens, and they in turn try to help humanity, and then another one tries to harm it. That's what makes it so confusing, because I didn't quite catch that stuff. It was all happening kind of fast, which is not bad in of itself. Like, I could understand that, but at the same time it just wasn't explained clearly. Either way though, they all just give up in terms of trying to take over the planet from Godzilla, and so they leave the planet and then go elsewhere. And then the rest of the movie is them coming back because it seems like they were never able to find another planet like Earth to colonize, and so they decided to come back here to try to be able to reclaim Earth, which is going to be another angle that I'll criticize here in a minute. But yes, indeed, let's talk about now all the bad things from this storyline. For starters, at the very beginning, there was a really weird montage that began, and that was the whole thing I just mentioned with regards to these kaiju rising up from the planets and then taking over the Earth, and then Godzilla battling everyone. As this was happening, it was literally like maybe 2 minutes at most. It was just a really, really quick just summation, a synopsis of everything happening within that timeline. And so as it was happening, I was thinking to myself, wait a minute, why are we, why is this just flying by? Why aren't we actually seeing this stuff? I mean, this is a CGI animated film. The budget to do something like this should be the same as if it was, let's say, a scene of two people talking, because it's animated. It's not like a real life type movie, a live action one where you truly have to spend money on a hardcore action scene. No, in this case, it should be the very same thing. So why is this flying by? I mean, I was seeing montages and scenes of some famous kaiju within the Godzilla films, just obliterating things, and then Godzilla apparently like monster battles. And I'm thinking, where's all this? Like, it totally made me think that there was a huge missed opportunity, that maybe instead of this being the first film, in terms of what we just saw, the one streaming on Netflix now, that the first film itself should have instead been this, the rise of the kaiju, the battle of monsters there on the planet, and then finally it should have ended with the loss of the planet to to humanity's grasp, like they no longer had it within their hands, and then they had to flee, and then the second film would have been what we just saw right now in terms of the Netflix film. That's what I think. I think that would have been much better, because again, the CGI, it's animated, all this stuff would have just not cost us, it would have cost the same as anything else, and it would have set up a fantastic leadway into the secondary film, the second one, involving them trying to reclaim Earth. But no, instead it's all just summed up into one single like 2-minute montage that just blew the opportunity right there. I was not happy when I saw that, and I was realizing, what's going on. Even though there were some cool shots within it, like the airport scene when they were escaping, that was pretty cool, of course, seeing Godzilla, the lumbering destruction that he is, coming up upon them like doom, and then laying waste to everyone around that location. That was really, really neat. I wish we had more of that stuff within the film. But yes, indeed, that was a huge missed opportunity. So yes, the rest of the thing to nitpick on is it goes, they leave the planet, they come back. So much of the film, though, it doesn't involve any monsters. For a film that says it's called Planet of the Monsters or Monster Planet, it involves very tiny portions of these monsters. And in fact, most of the film, and I see this with a lot of other critiques, involve these boring characters. Everybody is just plain boring within the film. The human characters, the alien characters even more so. Everything is just talking and then more talking and then talking about the previous scenes that they talked about. I mean, it was just crazy, scene after scene of this. And yes, like Shin Godzilla had a lot of that talking too, but it's live action. You're more I guess in tune with that scene. You're more involved with it whenever you're looking at something live action. But when you're looking at something animated, it has to keep your attention going. It's very hard to do so whenever you involve characters that are just so wooden, so basic. Here you have the main character in that case who has all that angst, all that. Every scene of him was just pretty much him gritting his teeth and then declaring some kind of hyperbole, and then we were supposed to sympathize with him. The movie gave very little, though, backstory to it. Obviously, like some of his family or all of his family was killed, and then his grandpa, is that correct, was trying to leave the ship, the main ship that they left on, I guess, to try to go onto another planet, and then they were killed as well. It just seemed like that was his whole shtick. It was just pure 100% angst. There was nothing else to truly relate to him. And then you had those weird aliens that were just, I don't know, monks, pacifists, something along those lines, where they were just there, always spouting this, or at least the main alien was always spouting this therapeutic, poetic stuff, like throughout his entire existence within the film. It made me wonder. I mean, is he going to do anything else other than quote poems or something along those lines within the film. And then you had, I guess, the captain, if you could call him that. I'm trying to remember. I don't know these names. My apologies. But you had the captain who was just there to almost like bark orders, and then you had someone else, I guess, the main antagonist, a guy with blondish hair who was assigned the main mission, who of course formed a rivalry with the main character, and then they would have to not duke it out, but they would have that rivalry happen afterward, both on the ship and then on the planet itself. It was just a big loss when it came to these human characters. You didn't care about them, you didn't care about what happened. Maybe it was the writing, maybe it was the fact that, again, there was very little build up to their circumstance until they eventually just showed themselves off screen. But otherwise, it was just why so much of a movie that's called Planet of the Monsters is instead dedicated to these humans. It was another missed opportunity for it too. Also, another critique associated with this film is that there's just like whenever the action does start, there's very little of it. I mean, so much of the film was the build up to land on the planet, to actually come back to Earth and then be able to land on it and then come there and then explore it. The thing though is that it didn't make much sense why they were there in the first place. Even one of the other characters, I can't remember which one, was kind of mentioning that as well. It's like, why go back to this planet that's so clearly hostile? I mean, there was even a scene where the plant life itself was razor sharp. Like it was something involving like the leaves themselves. If you even touch them, you would cut your fingers right then and there. So why deal with something like that? Let alone you have giant flying monsters, and then of course Godzilla somewhere there within the vicinity, always wandering around the Earth. Why not just continue to be on the ship or try to find something else? That character, when they brought up all that stuff, it made perfect sense. But then of course the main character with his angst still wanted to make sure that he could reclaim Earth, let alone, it didn't matter, the cost of lives that they just lost up to that point in a few minutes. I mean, it was amazing trying to figure out how he would explain the loss. I think it was like 14 people in his crew within the very first monster attack, and they would basically have to live on Earth with those helmets on, because I think there was that notion that if they went outside without those helmets, there's something in the air, the radiation would just be bad. Why live throughout all that? Why have all that danger and then just constantly be fearful for your life? It just didn't make sense. So when they finally go there and they land, and then they go through that action involving the first scene of the flying monsters, I thought that was going to be really cool. I was like, finally, we get to see some monster action in a film titled Monsters. But then that was it. It was just up, and then when it was done, it was just them being attacked for maybe about a minute or two, and then that's it. I mean, I was gonna give up on this film at that point, but then I thought to myself, I can't. I have to continue, have to see it. I have to finally see Godzilla within a Godzilla named movie to find out what occurs. And then when he finally comes on board, he makes his debut within the film, and he takes on the humans there. It was something again that was just lacking in terms of action. Here you had something that resembled Godzilla, and I'm glad that the ending finally, gave the explanation why this thing wasn't exactly Godzilla, because it did seem like it was a lower powered version of the Godzilla we know of. Here you had these things, these machines that the humans were flying that were able to harm it seems like, just with little, pew pew pews from the actual machines, let alone some of those tanks that they were flying, that they were using as well on the ground. And this is supposed to be Godzilla, like this is supposed to be the most powerful incarnation yet, and all he was doing was just basically lumbering from one place to another and then firing off his atomic breath every now and then. It was cool though to see that version of the atomic breath along with the sound that it made. I'll give it that, but it was just so brief of the action associated with it. And then another thing to point out with this action, the critique on it, is the ending of it. This is where it's going to get a little spoiler. But the ending of it and the way they defeat Godzilla, this version of Godzilla, it was basically Shin Godzilla all over again. It was the main hero, again with his angst, barking orders from another location far away from Godzilla. And then it was just one step after the other. It was lead Godzilla to one point, lead him to another point, block him in, go towards, in that case, a spot when between a cavern of some kind, and then blow up the sides of it and then bury him. And when I was watching this, it was the same exact thing as Shin Godzilla whenever they were leading Godzilla to the middle of the skyscrapers and then tumbling the skyscrapers on him to trap him. And then in that version, they were of course using that liquid into his mouth. Here though, they were trying to input something into his body, something, I guess it was, the way it was explained was Godzilla needed some kind of, was it shockwaves? Something like that within his body that would allow it to just not nullify, but essentially blow up from within, and that way they could defeat Godzilla. So it was the same exact type of ending within Shin Godzilla as it was here. So that was a big bummer there. Here I was hoping for finally some big, huge monster action, but no, it was just basically him being led one more time to a certain point, and then that's it. About the only grace that this thing had was at the very, very end. Once everything seemed like it was a-okay, then of course there was a huge earthquake, and then you had the real Godzilla in his towering presence. I mean, straight from almost hell itself, coming from the bottom of the earth, towering over everyone, a walking mountain, huge, by far the biggest incarnation yet. When Netflix and YouTube and Netflix and Toho Studios and everyone else promoting this movie said this will be the largest Godzilla, yeah, they meant it. I mean, this thing was huge, and then here he was finally making his real presence, just completely obliterating everyone within seconds. I was thinking to myself, why wasn't this within the entire film? Like, why didn't we see this there instead of the boring humans, the boring aliens, the boring exposition on the ship, the boring landing scenes and the talking scenes within the planet, all that stuff? Like, why didn't we see this whenever Godzilla truly made his presence at the very end? Oh, that was a really cool part though, to see that, and of course it led to a sequel with the main hero again ending in angst, declaring that he's going to kill Godzilla thereafter. How this little teeny tiny human is going to do so against this walking mountain, I guess we shall see. But otherwise, that final scene, I was thinking this would have made the film if this was the reminiscent of it, like the entire film was tied to something like this. But no, instead we got what we got when it came to this Netflix version of the film. But otherwise, that's pretty much all the stuff that I was critiquing here for this movie. Again, it's a huge wasted opportunity. I was really let down when I saw this. I was hoping that there was going to be some, I guess, positive stuff, some more positive stuff to describe, but no, based on my feedback and then others as well out there, it just seems like this was a huge letdown for all Godzilla fans. It's interesting too, because I was wondering when the film was going to come out why there weren't no special screenings. I mean, obviously it's a Netflix film, but even then Netflix likes to have every now and then their film screened to certain people, to certain reviewers, so that way they could get the early buzz out. But it wasn't in this case, and so that was almost like a telltale sign of what occurred there too. But what do you guys think of this film itself? Did y'all like it? Did y'all hate it? Was there missed opportunities? Was it the best thing ever? Be sure to post your comments below as well. Did y'all think it was tied up to my review here too? Did it make sense what I was mentioning in terms of all these missed opportunities, the boring status of it, and then everything of course leading up to the sequel? One last thing too, that was the other bad thing about this film. It just seemed like it fell into that biggest issue happening right now with movies. It's all about the threequels. It's all about the beginning, the middle, and the end. Nothing can be just a perfect standalone film anymore these days. Instead, everything just has to be we'll explain it later in the next film. That's the biggest sense that I also got from this film here. Instead of it just truly delivering in a satisfying way stuff that would make you say, wow, what a great film, everything was perfectly explained, not over explained but not under explained. No, in this case it just seemed like it was always just going to be, well, it'll be the next film that we'll discuss it here, which was again another letdown. If you feel that same way too, be sure to post those comments below as well. But yes, indeed, that's my review here for the latest Godzilla movie. Here's hoping that the next film, since this is going to be again a part 3 films, that the next one, part 2, is supposedly going to involve Mecha Godzilla. Another missed opportunity too as well, because there he was for just like 2 seconds in this film, and then that was it. Apparently destroyed as is. But the second one will supposedly involve him, and I'm truly hoping that we'll have some of those riveting battles, the most riveting human interaction, everything as far as action for the sequel. Here's hoping that that all happens there. So, alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.